Alright, big thanks to Asdin of Grinning Wolf Games who's written and edited this video, and I've just applied my dulcet tones. Let us know what you think of it in the comments. We may have a copy of this one to give away. Now, fans of My Time at Portia are going to be delighted to finally have the much anticipated sequel after, I've got to be honest, what feels like an eternity, and thankfully a successful Kickstarter. This iteration takes place in a western theme within a desert, which is very different to the first game. You've got a big open world, a load of new content, different festivals and events, and hopefully what will be an unforgettable journey within the world of Sandrock. But is it built upon firm foundations? Well, my name's Mark Walker, welcome back to Switch Up. Now let's find out.
I think you'll find our prices hard to beat.
Where you can find all sorts of fat.
Imagine a world that's been ravaged by catastrophic events, and the only way to rebuild it is by the sweat of your own brow. Well, in My Time at Sandrock, you've got the unenviable task of doing exactly that, with the aim of trying to restore things to the former glory. Now, the previous game had a similar system in that you could see flashes of a world that was destroyed and reborn, but this time it looks like it's you that's doing the rebirth. Such is life, you're not alone in this endeavour, you'll have a boss, known as Jan. He is the enigmatic head of the Commerce Guild in Sandrock, and while you'll be working for him, it does become apparent that he might not be entirely trustworthy at all times, and you'll have many interactions with the different townsfolk, building up relationships and carrying out side quests and content. It's through those that you'll actually uncover a lot of the hidden lore within the world of Sandrock, so there's an optional layer of depth there if you want to pursue it. Gameplay wise, well, we're looking at what I would describe as an action RPG farming sim. Now, upon your arrival to the town, you'll very quickly gain access to the workshop. From here you can carry out commissions for the Commerce Guild, and by doing so you'll actually build up your reputation as well as your money, which you'll use to purchase different blueprints to build machinery. Now, additionally, the Commerce Guild also tracks the best workshop every season, and if you're successful you'll be rewarded with a nice bit of loot. As far as feedback loops go, it's one of the most important elements to any farming or simlife game, and here it's certainly satisfying. As you unlock that new machinery, this then allows you to create new items. From those items you can then create more and more advanced machinery, fulfill more of those jobs, create bigger and better items, and as you can imagine, as you do that, the world expands, the possibilities and the amount of things that you end up crafting, placing, and in that regard it succeeds in making you feel like you're genuinely rebuilding that place. Now, what I will say is it can be a little overwhelming at first. That's certainly not unique to Sandrock, particularly when you're managing your inventory. Thankfully, you can purchase additional slots to increase its capacity, but certainly in the first few hours you'll be doing quite a bit of juggling. Your tools will allow you to break down various items within the world, channeling your inner Wally to break down scrap within the junkyard, cut down trees, or battle against the less domesticated animals you might come across. Regardless of what you're doing though, it's always to meet a task or objective, unless you're simply building up your own area. And everything requires stamina. You can see where this is going, and yes, you can restore a bit of this with some food, but eventually you are going to collapse with exhaustion and wake up in your bed. Imagine if it was like that in real life. I just wake up face down in a bowl of half-eaten cereal. The title also features many RPG traits that enhance that gameplay, and you may be familiar with some of these from the first game. Going to bed early, for example, grants the player a well-rested bonus and an extra 10% XP, but there are also a number of skill trees that increase your ability to carry out certain tasks effectively and your control over the build of character that you're creating. Combat features 4 different weapons, with one of them being a ranged, and it's nice to see them go a little deeper than we've seen in some simlife combat experiences. There's what's called a break mechanic. You have shields which, as you can imagine, get broken, and upon depletion, you've got a window to do much more damage to the health bar. It's only a small detail, sure, but it does add quite a little bit more depth to that. While I think there is still more they could do in that area, it's nice that they're beginning to actually think a little more about those experiences. I will say that although the story has its moments, I do think that character development feels a little limited. You've obviously got your quest lines that you can follow and your NPC quests, allowing you to build more of a connection with those and the various inhabitants you'll come across, but don't expect much in the way of quest lines that don't push beyond standard fetch quests. It's nice to see that festivals have made a return. I've always been a big fan of those, planning them on the calendar. And of course, there are romantic options in here as well. But you can also just as easily choose to be a hermit who doesn't socialise with anyone, or who just wants to get on with their day job. What you've got here then is an addictive and effective blend of farming, exploration and combat, exploring the dungeons in search of treasure, as well as the data discs. To add to the lore, it definitely adds some variety to the gameplay, but will feel very familiar to those who played the first title. Those data discs also are very useful for unlocking and upgrading machinery or buying different crops for the farm. Now, as the story progresses, the map also does, opening up and allowing you access to new areas. This in turn adds new materials, and so on, and so straightforward in that regard. As for the controls, well, they're intuitive and they do mitigate the repetitive strain seen in some other similar games. Activities like breaking down debris can be done with an action button held down, and a push of the left stick enables the player to run automatically, like back in the good old MMO days. One area that they haven't managed to fully resolve are wait times. Waiting for quests to complete, crops to grow. It's absolutely a part of these types of games, but the most successful titles do more to make that downtime feel useful. And look, there are things to do here. As I say, I just think there's still that one element to be worked on. But the biggest issue for gameplay at the moment, unfortunately, is the performance. Now, having said that, we do have a huge list of fixes that are coming on day one for when you play the game. So what I'm going to do is stick all of that down in the description so you can check out the patch notes. But we have encountered a few crashes with a little stutter here and there, and the developers themselves have mentioned that there is an upper limit on the amount of items, some scenery items, that you can place yourself, specifically on the Nintendo Switch version. So again, do check out the patch notes down below, it's going to be useful for you. For the actual gameplay and controls themselves though, I'm going to reserve the scores as they were and take the points off of the visuals and performance section. Both gameplay and controls score a very good 17 out of 20. So on the subject of visuals and performance, My Time at Sandrock on the Nintendo Switch has an interesting mix of visuals that evoke sometimes awe and others disappointment, but I personally find the actual style quite charming, and it does again feel like a continuation of the first game in that regard. There's some life to the characters and the environments as well, and also some good scale and perspective. Some of those towering skyscrapers partially buried in the sandy desert. It adds a touch of mystery to proceedings. The dungeons with their intricate designs and the robotic enemies that seem to have remained active over millennia, clearly employing Duracell. It's nice and it works. But as I said previously, it's marred by technical shortcomings. You'll have frame rate drops, crashes, the upper limit on the items that you can place. And look, when it's running fine, as you can see, it looks okay, and I'd be happy if it maintained that, but yeah, do check out the patch notes below. Thankfully, they are absolutely on the case. Sound and audio are a win, and a definite highlight to the experience that adds to its charm. The relaxing and soothing tunes, they perfectly complement the game's laid-back gameplay. It gives it a real peaceful atmosphere. Sound effects, which can often go overlooked, are also good and not annoying. These are things that you'll have to hear time and time again, so that's certainly for the better. And here's one. The majority of the townsfolk are actually voice acted. Another annoying bug that I came across was that the description window that appears next to items in the menu, it only works when you first boot up the game. It makes it difficult for you to check your inventory or purchase new items, which is just stupid really, and frustrating. For me, visuals and performance at the moment score 11 out of 20, whereas the sound and audio does a much better job. That scores 16 out of 20. As for value, well, the price of the digital version is £30.59. It's a bit unusual. Or you can get it physically for about 35 quid or your regional equivalents, but the download will take you, I think it's 4.9 gigs. As for those physicals, well, you've got a collector's edition that includes a comic book and a plush toy, and you're looking at least 60 hours of gameplay. And if you liked the original game, you'll certainly click with this one. I think it's just launching in a slightly worse state, if I'm honest. It really does need a patch. Right now though, I think we can safely give value 14 out of 20, and once patched up, that will go up. Do check the top comment, because I will update that when that patch drops. And as I say, you've got the information there so that you can check what that does. To conclude then, My Time at Sandrock is an enjoyable and captivating experience, although it definitely has its flaws. I thought the gameplay was engaging, the characters were intriguing, and that tranquil audio was on point. However, as we've said time and time again, technical issues and a somewhat shallow story hold it back from really reaching its full potential, but even despite the imperfections, it is a game that fans of the genre will really appreciate, providing that is that you can overlook a few hiccups. There's no doubt that players will sink hundreds of hours into it, turning the little town of Sandrock into a beacon in the wilderness. It gets a Switch Up score of 75%. Thanks to Asdin for that one. Hopefully you enjoyed the review. Let us know down in the comments. As I say before, we might have a copy of this one to give away, so yeah, it's always nice to get rid of those extra codes rather than they just sit around. Thanks to all of you, to our Patreons, our members, and as always for all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch Up. Cheers guys, see ya!